In all the years of the broadcast, ever run into someone who you regarded as untouchable? We just can't deal with this one. No.
Now, John, the business of Mr. Tebbit drinking a human body, do you find that amusing?
It's set out as a satirical show, which means it's got to deal with prominent, famous people. And you realise with your horror when you start just how many of them there are.
Are we agreed on the first record?
Yes, the first record is Jimmy Yancey playing The Rocks. This is a record we remember very well from our art school days, where the sort of early jazz piano suited the lifestyle of the time.
If you actually go in a pub on Monday lunchtime and you hear people talking about television, they will always say, "Did you see Spitting Image last night?"
I didn't actually see Spitting Image last week, but it was disgusting.
You can never embarrass politicians by giving them publicity.
Do you enjoy it, though? You watch it and enjoy it?
I don't watch it.
Wrong, Mr. Hattersley. I am a bully.
This is the prerogative of those who are jealous, who haven't been able to achieve anything in public life themselves.
who have no sense of responsibility, and who therefore will, at the end, pass on feeling that they've had a useless life.
It's 30 years since Spitting Image first hit our screens, and we have the creators of the show coming to the BFI South Bank.
I think the show really has never left the airwaves. I think it's true to say that the programme has remained in the ether.
It actually made young people connect with political issues. It was just a brilliant way, through making politics entertaining, it made young people connect with politics. How many shows on television can we say that about now? And I think that's a really great legacy of the show.
I was just going to say that I think if you look at what happened in the 60s, that was the way that was. There was very much sort of broadsheet satire. It was about issues. Spitting Image came along. It was much more tabloid in many ways. It was about personalities as much as it was about issues. And I think it just took that a step further.
Would you like to order, sir?
Yes, I will have a steak.
How'd you like it?
Oh, raw, please.
What about the vegetables?
Oh, they'll have the same as me.
Absolutely.
Right, another choice of record. Well, this is Please Mrs. Henry by Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's been with us. I mean, he's roughly the same age. I love this record because it always reminds me of the trouble we had with landladies in the early days, both in Cambridge and England.
Now don't cry me, lady, or I'll fill up your shoe. I'm a sweet bourbon daddy, and tonight I am blue. I'm 1,000 years old, I'm a generous palm. I'm T-boned and punctured, I've been known to be calm. Please, Mrs. Henry, Mrs. Henry, please, please, Mrs. Henry, Mrs. Henry, please. I'm down on my knees, and I ain't got a dime.
We'd like to work for a mass market, for as large a circulation as possible. I mean, otherwise you may as well just do your work and put it in a Bond Street art gallery and have it seen by informed people, and they'll make a judgment on it without being affected by it. We work through photography. I think people are conditioned to see photographs and to believe them. And if you give them a photograph of a caricature, I think there's an element of the double take. I mean, are they looking at the real person, or what are they looking at? It's their first reaction.
Let's have some music then, John. What's next?
Well, this is an Irish band called the Waterboys, who I'm very fond of, and a song called The Raggle-Taggle Gypsy. And I come from an Anglo-Irish background, at least on my father's side. And he was in the Navy, and so as children we were shipped all over the world, and so the gypsy side is that sort of wandering sailor's son thing. In 1979 I went to television hoping for a job as a trainee floor manager, and for reasons, again, ungiven, I was offered a series of 6 half hours as a television producer. And the only condition was I had to work with an insane young current affairs producer called Sean Hardy, who kept putting jokes into Panorama. They didn't want him, so I got him, and that was the start of Not the 9 O'Clock News.
Mrs. Thatcher revealed in the House of Commons today that a man called Sir Alec Douglas Hume was Prime Minister for several years in the 60s. The Queen, who was never told, has since stripped him of his life.
I think it's terribly important that comedy ought to be able to comment on world events and to deal with real things in the way that dramas and documentaries and even children's programmes are allowed to.
John Lloyd knew how to get a show on TV, and he took it on board, and he pulled the idea together.
I think that Spitting Image was a sort of hybrid between the tradition that Scarf comes out of, that we came out of, English comic art, English satirical art, and John Lloyd, of course, is out of Footlights. So it's that hybrid between Oxbridge footlights and a traditional form of visual art and Punch and Judy.
Who's that? That's Stalin and Tim Brezhnev. Yeah, from Beyond the Grave.
We'd worked with Tony Hendra before on the National Lampoon. He was a very good print satirist, and he was footlights. I mean, Peter Cook used to call him the bubonic plagiarist.
He does actually have an enormous hooter. Yes.
And he had the idea of making the puppets move by computer-animated mouths.
Now what I'll do is just black that out, and then I'll superimpose the mouth in there, and the mouth will actually be talking at you. Yes.
Okay, so you can take that back to the States and send us a piece of tape.
Yeah, I'll get it back. It's going to be interesting trying to get it through New York Customs then. It's 2 kilos of uncut Whitelaw.
He disappeared with Willie Whitelaw, and we never saw it again.
Well, we used to enjoy working with journalists who were good journalists. When it came along, the whole thing went down the tubes. And we realised that we were just about out of business.
The new technology, everyone could have their own magazine, and the budgets had gone. You couldn't do caricatures that took a week, have it photographed by a high-class photographer on 5.4 and expect to make a living. We knew we were in trouble.
It's 6:30, Monday, January the 17th, 1983. You're watching the first edition of BBC Television's Breakfast Time, Britain's first ever regular early morning television programme.
1983 was a crucial year in all kinds of ways. What was going on in the kind of very sedate sofas of new breakfast television, the election that had happened, but there was a time bomb waiting to explode under all of them.
If we could make them move and get them onto television, it's not going to be the kind of television that washes over you from the corner. It's not Good Morning BBC TV. It's going to really upset people. So that was my feeling about it, and that was exciting. That made you want to do it. I really wanted to do it.
Margaret Thatcher returns to Downing Street with the biggest majority since 1945.
It was a time of major turmoil. Nobody was really expressing what the great British public actually thought. They were much crosser, much more pissed off about it.
There was a time bomb, and it was a time bomb that had been set not by Al-Qaeda or any kind of people who knew what they were doing, but by a bunch of complete amateurs in many respects.
One night, and I have to say it really was, in the middle of the night, I suddenly sat up in bed and said, "It's puppets, and it's Roger Law and Peter Fluck."
Well, they could see the caricatures that we'd done, and you didn't have to be, a scientist to realise that if they moved, well, fantastic. So when we came up with the notion of making the caricatures move, there wasn't really a shortage of Thatcherite entrepreneurs queuing up round the block, We were happy to take the money. We took something like 70,000 quid off Sinclair, the home computer fellow, and we got to work on our puppets doing them, and the person that had interfaced between Sinclair and Peter Marley came round to the chapel where we were and said, "What kind of people are you? You've had £70,000 and you can't even say thank you." And Fluck shouted down the stairs, "You can't buy us for £70,000. Yes, we were very ungrateful. I mean, he took it back again. He had some trouble up in Dundee and needed the 60 grand back again.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be.
Norman!
Yes, leader?
Send in the Chancellor, will you?
Yes, leader.
The fight to win the next election starts immediately, and I will participate in those discussions, and of course I accept to the full my responsibilities in this election.
On the basis of this and some of Fluckenlaw's postcards, we went round, we hawked our product round and our CVs around all the television companies.
I took the existing static photographs of Roger and Peter's models and I combined them with a kind of pitch. Nowadays, to think that you could get a multi-million pound television series off the ground with something like this is, well, my younger colleagues in television would laugh, as would indeed you.
I think I led a sheltered life. I didn't know that John had previously offered it to Thames or to LGBT, and that they both turned it down, but I was not going to turn it down. I think that we needed a little bit of healthy political disrespect and perhaps a bit of anarchy in the weekend schedule.
And in London, it is breakfast time.
Morning, leader.
Morning, Norman.
Anything in the post today?
Nothing much, Norman.
Norman Tebbit was the character that we all came to love and endure, both as a person and as a puppet. But Thatcher, as you can see, is dressed in a way that she never was in the series. Her eyes don't move, and her voice is a completely different voice, because we hadn't discovered Steve Nolan yet.
By the way, Norman, how are your children?
Oh, delicious, thank you, leader.
Really, Norman, you are a sight. Let me get you someone to blow your nose on.
I committed £60,000 to a pilot. £60,000 at the time was a lot of money. It was certainly more than you'd commit to a sitcom pilot or a game show pilot. It was getting towards drama money, really.
Nobody had done this before. The nearest they'd come to doing anything like this was The Muppets, and this turned out to be 1,000 times more complicated than The Muppets.
We had to make the show in Birmingham because the unions insisted, and unions were very powerful in those days. And then we had to then ship, the first few years, all the way up to Birmingham in an enormous lorry, increasingly larger lorries as we built more and more puppets, and come back down again and start again. So the work schedule was made difficult by that sort of endless round and round commute as well.
It's quite clear we knew absolutely nothing about television whatsoever, about budgets or studios or puppeteering, directing, script writing, script editing, the whole nightmare world, you know.
John, there is still a shadow problem here, if we can be aware of that. Perhaps lighting can help.
That's it. Leave the light act.
We went up there to Birmingham and we met a bunch of people who'd basically been used to making Crossroads.
Okay, 5. And...
Good morning.
Good morning.
I hoped we might have a word.
So did I.
When you're ready.
Oh, I'm ready.
Not here.
When?
We're not rushing.
No. Don't worry about me, David. I'm not easily pushed. How about lunch?
And the first few weeks were awful because they hated us. You know, all these beardy hippies coming up from London with their lots of lapsed Catholics, lots of ex-communists, you know, mad people who'd never been in the studio, kept standing in front of the cameras, tripping over the wires, and all these decent, you know, brummies in sort of brown suits and, you know, sensible brogues and all that, having to suddenly being asked to work till, well, literally all-nighters the first few weeks. And they couldn't believe what had happened to them.
I always think that television's strange because there are things that you're supposed not to do on television that people do in the pub or in their own homes every day, and that's all we're trying to do is just do ordinary things to make ordinary people laugh, really. And it's not there to offend or to outrage, it's there to be funny. That's the main thing.
First spitting image, Central's new puppet show which satirises people in the public eye.
Okay, here we go, chaps. Puppets up, please. And what was the first show like? Well, all I can say is that none of my friends would speak to me the first 2 or 3 shows. They said, well, it's just shit. You know, it's just complete crap what you think you're doing.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Morning, Ed. May God be with you, Ed.
Mr. President, may God be with you.
I'm almost affronted by the savagery of the caricatures, because some of them are really very, very upsetting.
Excuse me, sir. Got him. Hang on just a second, Mr. President. That'll do it. Okay. Ready, sir?
It's the script, I'm afraid. Very patchy. And I don't know, I gather there's about a battalion of writers working on this. And I think you ought to really take 1 in 10 out and shoot them.
Hungry for lead, Ed.
Fantastic, sir. Well, this might even get the young people on your side.
You mean Congress?
Sometimes it seems that they go for a target and they completely overshoot it, and sometimes they seem to fall short of the target, and other time, very rarely does it seem to just hit on that very spot that should be the essence of satire, I suppose.
Will Ed Neese find the tiny organ? Will the president be able to function? Will it make any difference to U.S. foreign policy? Tune in next week for the 2nd episode of The President's Brain Has Nothing.
The best thing about the first program was it allowed the second one to happen, and so on, because we had to land on our feet.
The first few shows, there were theoretically 5 producers who had to sign off on everything. And it couldn't be done, we couldn't make a decision. So gradually, you know, people got moved or shifted or fired, and to the point where one person had to be the funnel.
I didn't know what I now know, that the team were at each other's throats for half of the time.
Now, I noticed this here, you got this cricket bat here.
Yes. No, I carry this partly out of, I don't know, I suppose, what's the word?
Affectation?
Yes, I mean, it's a kind of totemistic thing, you know, but to be quite frank with you, it's come in useful in a couple of situations. Certainly in the topsy-turvy world of heavy rock, having a good solid piece of wood in your hand is quite often useful.
Mm-hmm. It was quite obvious fairly soon that Tony and John Lloyd wouldn't work as a team of producers. It was either one or the other.
Eventually that changed and it became this much simpler structure that Andrew left, Blair did all the money and I did all the, you know, basically the editorial and creative stuff. And that started to work.
After Hendra left, Lloyd brought in two Northern boys, Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, to make the show funny and to make it topical. And they were there to lower the tone, and my God, they certainly did.
Ah, Larry. Dear Larry. Ah, Johnny. Dear Johnny. So, how have you been keeping, Johnny? Tell me the news. I've grown a beard. Ah, a beard. Splendid. Where? Here, on the end of my chin. Of course. There it is, of course. How foolish of me. No. It's not there now. It fell off this morning over breakfast. Dear beard. Dear Beardy. Yes, poor Beardy. I loved old Beardy. We both did. That's gone? They're gone. Scotty? Gone? Poor Scotty. They've all gone now. Beardy, Scotty, Raffy. All gone.
After a while, it became sort of a mix, and the puppeteers and the puppet makers would come up with ideas for puppets, which we would incorporate, and we would come up with ideas for puppets which they would go and build.
The pressure meant that you could never make things properly. You'd get phone calls from John Lloyd in Central saying, I need 8 camels by the morning, Rog. Can you do that? And all of that really got on your nerves, because you never really did anything. But the trade-off was you could make the political statements you wanted to make, so it was sort of worth it.
Why do we pay a police constable who's just started more than we pay a ward sister?
Tell him, Norman!
Yes, leader. Foul pest. When were you last in an NHS hospital for, let's say, concussion or double concussion?
Never. I've got private health care.
Exactly. Wow. Now, when did you last cause a near riot by depriving the NHS of nurses and doctors and extra funds?
I do that all the time.
Exactly. Ergo, you need police protection.
You mean we pay the police a high salary to protect us from the people we take the money from to pay the police a high salary?
Yeah.
And it was the puppeteers saying the scripts weren't any good.
The voiceover people saying the scripts weren't any good.
The critics
saying the scripts weren't any good. Yeah. Yes, I remember that bit.
When Spitting Image started, many reviews said the puppets were brilliant, but the scripts were terrible. And as I had nothing to do with making the puppets and I was responsible for the scripts, I was a little bit hurt.
The puppets are brilliant, but I didn't think much of the script.
I had a wonderful letter from a woman who said she couldn't understand what all the fuss was about because she thought the scripts were absolutely wonderful, but she couldn't comment on whether the puppets were any good or not because she was blind.
Would you like to order, sir?
Yes, I will have a steak.
How'd you like it?
Oh, raw, please.
And what about the vegetables?
Oh, they'll have the same as me.
I'll be absolutely thank you.
In the past, most caricaturists have worked by themselves. Now, I think the best caricaturists are obsessive. The best ones work obsessively, and I think probably have a deeply distrustful nature. And maybe romantics or idealists or moralists or social reformers object to what's around them. But the ability to make people laugh at a funny face is a fascinating tool and a weapon.
When I look back on Spitting Image all those years ago, and let's face it, it is 30 years ago, as we know, it seems like it happened to somebody else. So I can look at it now in a very kind of forgiving, cheerful way. The pain is long since gone.
I don't throw my dinner at the television anymore. That's a good sign, you know. But it's that was the kind of thing that made you want to do Spitting Image. But, you know, just be careful of what you want. You needed huge amounts of energy. I mean, the amount of, you know, uplifting drugs that went through Spitting Image so that people could actually cope. with the amount of work, 60 hours, 80 hours a week, the only people that survived at Spitting Image were people who had high energy.
A nice two-handed partnership. Gentlemen in velvet jackets and shiny shoes producing caricatures with a breath. But things have changed now. We're satisfying the needs of television in this factory.
Yes, the London Enterprise Board's answered a good dance. This is the first caricature sweatshop in the world.
Perhaps the last.
And it's full of very young people who have to sleep under the benches at night.
If they get any sleep at all.
Well, the very first thing is the photographic reference comes in, and then we go over there to the modelling. When the modelling's completed, it goes into the mould room where it's moulded.
There are master moulders over there.
Once the thing's moulded, it then goes into the foam room to be foamed. Once it's foamed, it comes back over here to the puppet makers who fit up the They also make the eyes over there by a machine shop, and they are then fitted in.
Then after that, it goes through to this room again to be painted, for the paintwork to be done.
You see that stack of boxes over there? They're putting the boxes in alphabetical order, taken down in that very small lift that you saw, onto a lorry and driven to Birmingham, where the show's made in 3 days.
I know. Let's call him Bing. We haven't had a Bing in the family for ages.
No, I still don't see what's wrong with Charles.
We're not going to call him Charles.
Okay, how about Dick? What? No, wait, John Thomas.
Listen, here's one. Zorba or Stavros.
Gordon's nice.
We're not calling him Gordon.
Look, I'm going to sell the whole thing Donna.
Oh, like Donna Summer.
No, Donna Kebab.
Thixton's Old Peculiar.
No, wait.
Look, it's a totally off-the-wall suggestion.
No, not Charles.
We're just trying to think of a name for the baby, darling. Tell me what you think of...
No. I've decided he's going to be called Henry.
What? Henry?
Yeah.
Henry? Why Henry?
All my friends call Henry, okay?
Oh, wonderful. Hooray! Henry it is, then.
Yes, hooray, Henry. Yes.
Good. I'll christen him. I name this baby Henry. May God bless him and all who sail in
Spitting Image caused such a stir that for the first 6 shows, I believe uniquely in the history of television, I had actually to go to defend it line by line and word for word to the Independent Broadcasting Authority at their headquarters in the Brompton Road. Oh yes, hello again, John.
Norman!
The business of Mr. Tebbit drinking a human body. Do you find that amusing?
I said, oh no, sir, I don't find it amusing at all.
You don't find it amusing?
No, it's not meant to be funny, sir.
Not funny?
No, sir, it's, as you remember, it's actually an homage to Dean Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal of 1729, where he suggests that if the Irish are short of potatoes because of the famine, there are plenty of babies for them to eat instead.
Oh, satire. Oh, lovely, that's fine.
Caricature is exaggeration. Punch and Judy would be, it's about hitting each other. It's about being extremely rude, which I had a talent for. So
The puppets have some advantage as an animated Disney character has. You can run it over with a car. It would go flat and you would get up to stand up again and go back into business. With puppets you can bang them around.
As television comedy, Spitting Image goes probably a lot further than That Was the Week went. But people are less shocked You can't come on and have Millicent Martin singing mildly topical songs and no one's going to say ooh anymore. You have to go further than that to get people's attention.
Just cut it in a style that will be universally popular.
Certainly, madam.
The skills came from, us having to find people who could help us. And for us, it was the people who worked with the Muppet Show.
Time. Mary, I'm 92. Shut up! Get out of my way!
You can't really see, and to try and mask your head as much as possible, you've got the clothes over your face, you've got wires dangling off you for the eyes, and you've probably got another person wrapped around you operating a hand who, if you move, comes with you.
Puppeteers know each other, so you find a puppeteer, you get 10 others knocking on the door.
Two robots, please.
How do you see what the puppet's doing? Well, we have a monitor, a television monitor at our feet, that we can look down at and see exactly what's going on. The picture on the monitor is reversed, so that we've actually got a mirror.
This is for item 19. This is the 19th step of the program.
19 in one day.
So I think we've got round to 19. We have to put everything at 2 feet. That was decided after many experiments, but that was the optimum. So everything is 2 feet. So our floor is always 2 feet from the studio floor.
And this is all the thanks I get.
After the first probably 6-8 shows, you had a crew that was all on side, that everybody was prepared to put in these hours. And they believed in it, because these same guys who go to the pub formally and said, I make Crossroads, and people go, oh yeah, really? They say, I make Spitting Image. You do Spitting Image? Yeah, I do all the sound effects.
Yes, I tell you what, let's use the cup. You put them on foot, yeah. Once again, then.
Some terrific, the talented young guys who were much cleverer than we were, who could really do it. Tim Watts, David Stoughton, Pablo Bach.
We have about between anything from about 3 costumes to about 10 costumes to make in 2 days. So some weeks you might get a bit more time, and other weeks you don't get any time at all.
I've got a feeling with Mrs. Thatcher that if I was going to improve her image, that's exactly what I would have suggested, that she actually does go in for a 3/4 wig and has a permanent hairdo and almost a guaranteed image.
One of the lifers on the team was Scott Brooker, and he was the only person that knew how to make a proper puppet. Out of all of us, and all the animals you see, the white cat, the dogs, the anteater, they're all Scott Brookers.
Yes! Who is it?
For my age, I'm wearing quite well. Little rips in the latex start to appear as one gets older. That's the trouble with being a puppet.
We had a very, very best voice artist, but at first it was all impersonation, and Harry Enfield made the breakthrough. He took one look at the puppet and thought, this has to be a voice caricature, and that's the way it went.
Douglas Hurd's another one of mine that I used to do. When he first came in, when I decided to do him because Liam Britton got sacked, and I thought I might be out of a job, I better learn the new Home Secretary. And I heard him, and he's always very slightly irritated, isn't it? Just very slightly in normal life. It doesn't matter what you ask him, how's it going in the Middle East? He said, well, it's not a question of how it's going. He's very slightly cross. But the puppet, Roger Law came up with this ridiculous puppet with a sort of ice cream cone head, and it was obvious it needed a sort of huge sort of voice, so I just turned him into Fuzzy Bear and took the sort of slight growl in his voice and made it into a huge growl so that the whole head could move, and then it worked with the puppet.
There's been a
Street! There's been a bomb in Oxford Street!
Who's responsible?
You are, you dreadful old witch!
Chris Barry, he was just a puppeteer. He really could take a voice apart.
When I became president, someone told me I had a voice. Then I opened my mouth, and here it came. I'm still discovering many other things about my body, and Mags is helping me. Aren't you, Mags?
No, Ron, I'm not.
Is this a two-shot?
One of my treasured memories is John Lloyd saying, well, this is Steve Allen. He's Mrs. Thatcher.
You know, spitting image portraying me as someone who is out of touch, someone who has no humanity. Well, the truth is, I care. I care a great deal. I care, and don't you ever forget it! The rhythm of the voice is more important than the sort of tone. For example, with Hattersley, you can actually do an impression of Hattersley without actually speaking. So you can go blah 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 blah, and you get an idea of what he's saying, even though actually isn't making any words, because the rhythm's there.
I've gone off the idea of red, Roy. Yes, no. Red's too red. Red says red all over it. I prefer grey, like this.
That's blue, Neil.
No, bluey grey, and I'm a bit concerned about the name Labour. Labour. It makes it sound like a bunch of lefties.
We are a bunch of lefties.
But Labour sounds totally wrong. You can't imagine saying Labour government or Labour Prime Minister.
Well, what would you prefer?
Something beginning with a C.
Conservation Party.
Starts well.
Neil, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Put the wig on, Roy. How's it feel?
I have this strange urge to kiss Ronald Reagan's leathery bottom.
viewers. That was more people than it took to elect the Tory government, which I think was 13.5 million voters. And it gave you an extraordinary amount of clout.
Both of you are the same height. Why do you think the Spitting Image people came up with the notion that you were in the breast pocket? Is it because David Owen seemed more subtle?
He was taller than I. Quite a bit taller than I. I think that was true. I mean, I was always portrayed in cartoons as being very small. I don't think I am particularly. I'm 5'9.5", but that's the way the cartoonists saw me.
Apparently the Liberal Party did a survey which showed that our portrayal of David Steele did them enormous electoral harm, which we didn't necessarily set out to do.
Who will be the leader? Again, David. One word from your name and one word from mine. I see. Which words? Well, from yours, David, I thought we'd take the word David. David. And from yours, David? What about Owen? So, it's David Owen, head of the Social Democratic Party. Well, that's put my mind at rest. Thank you very much, David. David, have you just burst a hot water bottle? No, David,
We can't take the blame for bringing them down. I mean, it's hardly our fault. And we were just, I think Spitting Image just does mirror what's going on in the real world.
And is it the first time puppets have been at the top? Up 10 at 1, The Chicken Song, Spitting Image.
Birmingham, I would get up at 5 in the morning to read all the papers, and then have studio all day, all the way through the day, and at lunch break you'd have writing problems. When the recording was finished at normal times of 6 or 7 o'clock, then there'd be all the issues, you know, they'd have angry puppeteers, I don't want to work with him, he smells, or whatever it is, and so you'd have 4 pints of lager, and then there'd be arguments about the miners' strike, or Roger would throw a sofa at me.
John and I used to have incredible stand-up screaming matches, you know, and he'd say, well, I mean, you're just sort of left-wing diet tried, Rog. You say, she's not interested in the left wing anymore, John. She's interested in people like you. Reasonable liberals.
You mean Mrs. Thatcher?
Yes, Mrs. Thatcher. She's after your tail now, mate. She's finished with us. And so those conversations, I doubt those conversations happen even in the newsrooms in the television these days.
And I'd fall into bed exhausted about 2:30 in the morning, having out in 2 hours. And I would often find myself sitting in the bath, aged 31 or 2, just crying, just thinking nobody should have to do this, this is impossible. It's very much more complicated than anything I'd done. And Geoffrey Perkins kind of saved my life by coming in on the 3rd series to produce it and run it, so I could kind of relax a bit.
World Driving Championship. I started on the show as a script editor, and 6 months later I was producing it, which was fantastic.
By the end of the 3rd series, it was running. You know, it was a machine. Geoffrey took over. He was very good at it, and there was nothing for me to do really. Well, I left Spitting Image in a huff. I was kind of tired out, and resigned. And so after Spitting Image, I went off to do 2 series of Blackadder, the 3rd and the 4th series, and I was briefly a television presenter. I basically decided I'm going to have some fun now. I don't want to be a public servant anymore.
Geoffrey Hicklin from Nottingham rang in to say that he finds Spitting Image very irresponsible. It's disrespectful to government leaders and to royalty. Good. Do you bother about what people think?
Yes, we do. I'm glad that he does find it's irresponsible and disrespectful, because that is exactly what it's supposed to be.
As you know, I won't be here forever, and my successor might be someone from round this table, because you are the only people I feel I can trust these days. About that, Margaret. What? I'm afraid we just can't work with you anymore. What do you mean? No.
Following the sad news concerning the Prime Minister, instead of the published programme, as a mark of respect, there will now be a piece of music. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll sing the song of cheer
Politicians today strike me as being so much more colourless than they were sort of 5, even 10 years ago.
Yeah,
is that a problem?
It is a problem. People are more bland these days. I mean, you know, with the pop stars like Jason Donovan and things, they're not as sort of colourful as they were a few years ago. And a lot of the colourful members of the cabinet, like Nigel Lawson, Leon Britton, Heseltine, they've gone or were kicked out. You know, but and the thing is now you've got a lot of grey men. A lot of young sort of up-and-coming Tories, and they're sort of characterless.
Last record is Frank Sinatra. Sinatra singing "The Best Is Yet to Come."
Not eating your peas, dear?
Oh no, I'm saving them to last.
Best is yet to come the day you're mine. Come the day you're mine. I'm gonna teach you to fly. We've only tasted the wine. We're gonna drain the cup dry.
We've got a call now. Daniel McAdams. Hello, Daniel. What's the question?
Where did he get the ideas for the Spitting Image dummies?
I probably slightly reduced the amount of politics. I really wanted the show to be a popular show and for it to be funny above all else. The writers wanted to do different things. A new generation of writers came along who weren't particularly interested in politics. And we accommodated some of that.
John Colescott, and I'm responsible for, Mr. Motivator, Harry Carpenter, Wolf from the Gladiators, Ian Paisley, Frank Bruno, Kenneth Clark.
Alistair McGann, and I'm responsible for John Major, Tony Blair, Paddy Ashdown, Jeremy Paxman, Chris Eubank, and Kenneth Branagh, and several others, including you, Alan Hansen, which is coming up soon.
I think the Fergie puppet is brilliant, because there's something about Fergie's face, you know. The eyes and the sort of, you know, that sort of stupid laugh that I gave her. I don't know why I gave her that snort. Poor woman's probably never done that in her life.
Gosh, Anne, it's so helpful having someone to talk to.
Times had changed. I was exhausted with Splitting Image long before it finished.
Anyone admitting to being on props today?
That was the first take, okay?
Okay, here we go, chaps. Puppets up, please. Let's go. Go trap.
In the shower. Heck, George, I can even go to sleep in the middle of a scene.
I think Central have had enough. And I think they thought they could dismantle it and probably bring it back when they felt like it. And we said you can't, because there are 1,000 puppets that deteriorate. There's all these molds. We have to store them. We don't have the money to store them. There's, 2,500 square feet of costumes.
You're always looking for the most negative thing you can find, that you can read in the news. You find that bit where you can take the piss out of somebody, and it gets a bit depressing, because if you come to the realization that you ain't going to change anything, because I remember an early meeting with other people and Lloydie in a pub in the Fulham Road, and at that time we were fully fired up with we're satirists, we're caricaturists, we're going to change the world. And he said it doesn't change anything, and he was absolutely right.
I take the view the most interesting satire since Splitting Image is the Two Johns on Rory Bremner, which is two faceless, very charming fellows talking about in a very reasonable way about why we've taken all your money and why we're committing genocide. I think you'll see, now I put it quite reasonably to you, I think you'll see what I'm saying. They're not responsible, you don't even know their names, they could be a corporation, they could be a PR firm, and they're all the same person, and they control us, and they can't be found, they can't be pointed at. When Mrs. Thatcher died, Lady Thatcher died, and I was asked on telly a bit to go and talk about it, and they'd show clips, and I was astonished at how funny it was, even the stuff that at the time I thought wasn't very good, it wasn't funny enough, wasn't clever enough, wasn't well enough made. Then it was divisive, it was angry, it was probably the most unpopular government of the century, and also the most popular. And that's what the climate in which Splitting Image could thrive.
Splitting Image ended up as a show that 12 million people, 14 million people, never less than 7. In the thick of it is one of my favourite satire shows. They're lucky to get 2 million. That is the difference. So I think that Peter's assessment of what would happen with Splitting Image is correct for now. If we did it, we'd be a cult thing, probably on the net. A lot of the commissioning editors have never made television, ever. So they really want to cover their bottom. There aren't people like Denton that can take a decision. Anything that might fail miserably is avoided. And that must be to do with budgets, and it must be to do with the fact that they've kind of Americanized the system. But I don't feel that strongly about these people. What have you got? You've got a PR man who's never had a proper job. And you've got a government that's sort of like It's like a George Orwell land, but conservative.
I think Spitting Image is a programme that stopped and made people think, and it was a very important barometer of public opinion at the time. We thought it was very important that the Imperial Museum represent Margaret Thatcher, one of the most important political figures of the late 20th century, in our new exhibition, which looks at the post-war world. And so Margaret Thatcher sits in a little group of objects considering the war in the Falklands. But also next to that is Northern Ireland, and she was a very important political figure in both the Falklands and Northern Ireland. It's a caricature, it's slightly violent in the way that she appears deliberately, and so that makes people stop and think.
Tell me again, how much better mind than Neil Kinnock?
Only twice the man he is, PM.
Meantime,
10 hands at least.
Oh, yes, 20. How long can I stay on as Prime Minister?
And so we chose the Spitting Image puppet because we felt it would provoke a response in visitors rather than just show what she looked like as a natural representation.
Special is an understatement in this instance, because we are now going live to none other than Her Majesty the Queen herself. Just explain to us then, ma'am, why you're at the British Film Institute this evening.
I'm at the BFI South Bank to celebrate 30 years of Spitting Image.
Are you bathed in a warm glow of nostalgia, John, or are you having kind of flashbacks like a Vietnam vet?
Well, I think you live with a one-sided view of what it was like for 30 years. Roger and I were extremely angry with each other a great deal of the time.
We'll be talking about that,
But also, it was marvellous. It was fantastic. It was such fun. It was so brilliant. Well, I think you forget, I mean, the talent that buoyed the three of us up. Weren't they amazing?
And how about you? How did you feel about it?
Well, I completely agree with John there. I mean, it took a whole community of people to put the programme together, and it had a curious split, actually, because it was split between people who went to art school and learnt sculpture and painting and things, and then the guys from Oxbridge, and it was a curious mix.
And was that what caused the often combustible moments, or?
No, I mean, Roger was throwing sofas around because he's like that. He does it at home.
It was incredibly good fun. It was really good fun.
But it was, I mean, I think for the producers and
hell for them.
I think it was really hard because we got the fun, we got to write it, we got to see it happen, and then when it went out we said, oh, you've messed it up. And, you know, gave them a hard time.
We watched it religiously every Sunday evening. It was fantastic.
What, you and David?
But you two, I knew.
Me and my wife.
I remember speaking to a conference of policemen, and shadow cabinet or cabinet ministers weren't popular with the police force. In the front row, every policeman took out an umbrella when I began to...
When Spitting Image was on, many more people in the public knew the names of every politician in the cabinet than they do now. Now, people could probably mention 4 or 5 people who were in the cabinet.
But we did talk about... We talked
and the
about
shadow cabinet.
Part of the sort of impetus for the programme starting in the first place was a sort of loathing of Thatcher and the Conservatives. Do you think that they were kinder to you if you were in opposition?
But it did her good. This is what people don't understand. People like the idea we've got a strong, aggressive Prime Minister. It did a great benefit, I think.
Could I say a few words from beyond the grave? I think the problem is that, Margaret Thatcher was an incredibly conviction politician. Yes. That is the point. David Cameron is not a conviction politician. He wants to be everyone's friend. He's too friendly. He's the sort of man that would call John the Baptist Jack.
These bastards sloped off after a few years, and I was there for the whole 9 yards.
Why didn't you slope off?
It needed the money, frankly. I was, the liberal voting, middle of the road, reasonable BBC trained producer trying to mediate between all these lunatics. And they were all, Marxist, Che Guevara hats and all this kind of stuff. And by the time Flucky and I and John Blair had been shunted out by the mother cuckoo here, and he was on his own, the workshop went to Roger and said, we'd like a trade union. He said, not in my fucking company.
First off, I want to thank you guys for politicising a very young, impressionable 8-year-old 30 years ago. So thank you very much.
It was a great way for ineffable people and people who were resisting to recharge their batteries on a Sunday night. You gave us a lot of hope.
Do you now agree with Ted Heath that you wish you'd done something really rather more useful with your time?
Shopping around for prices, looking around for prices.
Hi. Thought we'd start early this morning. This is early.
Yes, it's time again for the BBC Shopping.
Is this crap the best Radio 4's got to offer? We'll turn it off.
Since the beginning of December, our shopping
We're making a nice cup of tea, Bucky. Okay.
In fact, the 57 items in our basket then cost us £17.97. Now today, those very same items have cost me £18.49. That's an increase of 52 pence in just over a month. Now the reason for this week's increase can be put down to more expensive tomatoes, greens and fractional rises on a whole range of goods, including beef, bacon, onions, apples, coffee and some cleaning materials.
Right, and in fact the milk prices are going to go up next month, and there's a talk about a cost of canned goods going up.
I'm afraid so.